Welcome back to Power Play. Is New Brunswick headed to an election? The premier of that province is facing political backlash from right within his own caucus and cabinet over changes to the LGBTQ2S+ policy in schools. As of July 1st, students under 16 will have to get parental consent if they want to change their pronouns or their names. Students who can't get that consent will be directed to talk to a social worker or a guidance counselor. The policy was the, quote, last straw for Social Development Minister Dorothy Shepherd, who quit cabinet last week over it. Here's what she had to say about the changes to the policy yesterday on Power Play.
It appears, and it feels to me, from my perspective, that this is more of a personal agenda than government policy. And so I really felt that that we watered down a policy that was there to protect children.
Here to talk about that is the Premier of New Brunswick, Blaine Higgs. Hi, Premier Higgs. Good to see you. Thank you for making the time.
You're very welcome, Esty. Good afternoon.
Premier, a minister who just left your cabinet told us last night the changes you've made to this policy will negatively impact kids. Are you sure the policy won't?
Well, Esty, we are trying to find a common path here where we protect children and we connect the parents as well as part of raising their families and being part of those early childhood years. So that's all we're trying to accomplish here is bring parents back into the equation, but also being cognizant of the needs of the child and how we work through that in a way that protects both.
But what that minister said, former minister Shepherd said, was that she thought the policy as it is designed, though you frame it around the issue of parental rights, will negatively impact kids. Are you positive that it will not? And if not, why isn't that at the center of your decision making here?
Well, certainly what we know for sure at this point is that the policy excluded parents. So a child could have a completely different identity at school, and the whole program, around the elementary school kids is that the parents would never be really told about it. And so you had a situation that there wasn't even a plan in place to involve parents at some stage. So what we're doing simply is saying, okay, and we're getting overwhelming support from parents who want to know and obviously want to be part of their children's growth and experiences. So they're saying, how do we make that work? How do we find a way that when a child, is looking at other options and said, okay, but I'm not ready to tell my parents, then how do we find the right counseling and support services that we can help both parents and the child, but do it in a way that it's done properly and that ultimately the two can have the conversation together.
But what if it's not safe for the kid to talk to their parents? What if a kid is not ready to come out to their parents? Why are you forcing them to do so?
Well, no, we're not forcing them to do so. What we're bringing forward here is a policy that doesn't hide the children's identity, especially in this situation, that they can have two separate lives. But there's no timeline in relation to when it's comfortable to do so. And if a parent has a difficult home life, or a child, has a difficult home life, we should know that, and we want to be sure that we don't send any child home in any condition that it's not safe for them, regardless of this particular situation.
Help me understand the evidence upon which you made this decision, because from what I've read, your province's child and youth advocate said in the 30 months between when you announced a review of 713 and when it came into effect back in 2020, your government was able to produce to him a total of 3 complaints around this issue. If any policy of yours gets 3 complaints, does that mean you're going to change it?
Well, that's not completely correct, Esty. The policy kind of went in, I said very quietly, without any real fanfare at all. And parents have been shocked and surprised because of some of the public events that have happened. And, there's a professional development day in which the criteria was kind of outlined of what would be at that event. And that became kind of a bit of an opportunity for parents to say, okay, what is this now my children are learning? And so then it started from there. But up to that point, parents really didn't understand or weren't aware of the policy. That's what's brought all of this to light is that how is this happening at school? And I'm not there to help my child through their emotional, their elementary years when I should be part of their raising. And so that's the issue, is parents feeling left out.
But the issue, as you described it just now, is very anecdotal in nature. Do you have anything that quantifies, for example, how many students told their teachers or asked their teachers to label them a different gender or by a different pronoun without their parents' consent? Is this thousands of New Brunswick children that were doing that prompted you to say this is a huge problem, we need to fix it? Do you have any evidence that supports what you did?
I think actually the point is that the evidence is that parents are shocked to find out that the teachers would purposely hide information about their child from them. On a parent's school night, there would be it could be very, very direct, where they wouldn't be told information about their child. And that's not right. That puts a teacher in a very difficult position. So where we're saying there's a bridge here, there's a way to manage this, and not to exclude parents and not to put the child at risk. But it is shocking that we feel that parents should not be aware or not be involved and engaged at critical stages in their child's life, particularly in the elementary years. I mean, that's a fundamental of our families and obligations that parents certainly expect to have.
But Premier, my question is around how many. I understand you're saying parents generally were surprised to hear this, but that can be the case for any number of policies that your government puts forth. People can have reactions. Why does that dictate that you change the policy? And I'm going to be honest about why I'm asking you, because your critics say that this is about your own personal beliefs, that you're uncomfortable with gender dysphoria. For example, you called it trendy just not long ago, and that you're imposing those beliefs on the policy direction you're taking without the evidence to back it up. So please be clear with viewers tonight. How many complaints did you receive that prompted this? How many parents are upset?
Patsy, we have had hundreds of responses from parents saying, "What is this? Why aren't we informed?" This has been an overwhelming outpouring of parents that want to be part of this process. And as for me, I'm a parent. I'm a grandfather. That's my motivation here, is that I know what it's like to raise a family, and my wife and I certainly wanted to be always part of our kids as they were growing up, and my children and their husbands are no different in relation to their children, my grandchildren. So the idea is simple. It's the basic responsibility that parents have. It's a basic fundamental obligation that makes it important for families to be together and for parents to take a responsibility in their child's life.
Are you just using this issue, though, to create a wedge, to get a reaction, to draw support from a socially conservative base? Is there really that much of a problem? When you say hundreds, for example, the Child and Youth Advocate said you only turned over 3 of them. 3 complaints.
Actually, when this became known by the public, that's when the whole the complaints, the concerns, the parents started to get engaged, and it became known when there was a professional development day back on May 5th. That's when all of this really came to light, and that's when parents started to question, what is this? This is purely about the role of parents in a child's upbringing, and how do we find the common ground so children are protected and parents are involved. And at the end of the day, everybody is part of that child's life and part of their experience through their early years.
And I certainly wouldn't want to take away, I'm a parent too. I want to know what's going on in my kid's life. But if my kid didn't feel safe telling me something, I would be understanding of that too. I just want to ask you about, if I could very bluntly then, as I mentioned, your critics' framing of this issue. Do you believe gender dysphoria is real? Are you comfortable with the concept?
Yes, I think it is real, and I think there is certainly many can have concerns, and I guess that's why we're saying let's have professionals be involved. Let's not put teachers in the middle of this. Let's have guidance counselors. Let's have psychologists, psychiatrists. Let's have, in any situation where children are having trouble and having issues and they need to have professional discussions, let's make them available so that we can be really helpful and help them, guide them through these times in their life when, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I would say especially probably more so today than many years ago with certainly social media. So that's the goal here is how do we help children and how do we help parents? as part of a united
A
process.
third of your cabinet, however, disagrees with the way that you've approached this. 2 more members of caucus means 8 people out of the 29 seats your party holds are not on board with you. 2 ministers have quit over your leadership style. Do you feel you have a mandate to lead your party, Premier?
Well, in caucus, Vassie, we get consensus. That doesn't mean that it becomes a unanimous decision, but we get consensus. And obviously, the majority of caucus believed in the policy changes that we were looking to make, and that we've moved forward on. So we had the majority of caucus in that, and that's how caucus works. It's unfortunate that it kind of takes a position and a stand like it has, and divided caucus. But we all have a path forward that we have to work together on and find solutions, and that's what we're doing right here. And I think the fundamental right of parents and children is being respected. The former policy did not include parents, and that was the missing link.
Premier, with great respect, I cover politics federally. I've covered it in many provinces. If I had 6 ministers in a cabinet coming out publicly, walking off the floor of the legislature, saying they disagree with a very specific policy that the Premier had undertaken, and another one quit and said she couldn't even run under your party's banner with you at the leader, I think it's fair to say there are questions around your leadership. Do you not submit that there is a weakened mandate for you to lead your party?
Well, Vassie, I think that, dealing with many issues, it requires, I guess, making tough decisions. And I appreciate the sensitivity in this decision. I'm not underplaying that a bit. I think the former minister that particularly recently resigned, was Minister of Health. We had changes back a while ago, and then she accepted, a position as Minister of Social Development. So she has worked within a system and has been working with me for some time, but the relationship has been a little strained from changes we've made. I mean, we had private discussions as the letter she released, but that was a private discussion, and so it's a little disappointing that it became a public one. It wasn't the intent as we talked through the issues, but yes, it's a tough decision, and it's tough for the emotions to run high, and I get it. I do get it. I really do. Well, the number of parents that we have that are reaching out to us and saying, we need to find a path that brings us all together, and we need to find a path where we're involved in our children's school life and particularly in their elementary years. But I guess that the point I raised is that we will find that path. And as far, the former ministers, to maybe quit now, but accepted the position in cabinet afterwards, I don't know. It's tough, but we'll work our way through this.
Is there going to be an election, Premier?
I am very, convinced that there's a role for parents in children's upbringing, and I do believe if it comes down to an election, I guess then I'd be prepared to go in that direction. But I don't want to do that. That's not my goal. My goal is to find a solution here that reflects the value of parents.